Highways in America are a very major part of every resident's daily life. Car ownership in the country has risen to over 91%, and it doesn't seem to be decreasing. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably have enough interest and knowledge about geography that you know the general differences. But I still think it's interesting to learn about the more exact facts and divisions related to this topic. I'll also go into the more regional picture and talk about which states call it what, and how some cities culturally differentiate from each other in regards to vocabulary. Before that though, I wanted to ask you to please consider subscribing. Growth is still fairly slow, and I'm still saving up for college here, so if you appreciate the content and want to support the channel, subscribing is the best way to do it. Thank you! So starting with a very simple overview from top to bottom, let's give ourselves a refresher on what every road and highway means in the country. So the lowest form would be a town road. This is where you'll find most of your small, unimportant residential roads, with names like First Street or Pine Road. They are obviously built, funded, and upkept by the town or city. Moving up, there are county roads, which usually have numbers or letters attached to them. Most states do this differently for what they designate as a county road compared to a state road. Some states have these blue signs showing the county name and a number, with some states involving more and more complicated configurations for their county road names, depending on how common they are. In states like Missouri or Wisconsin, county roads are used more majorly, and have a single, double, or triple letter as their name. This fascinates me because growing up in Wisconsin, I always considered a county road to be a more major, well-upkept, paved road. But in some states, it could just be a small gravel road. Moving up, you then get to state highways, sometimes referred to as state routes or state roads. This is upkept by the state and usually sees good road conditions. Some states treat their state highways differently, making them either important routes from city to city, or again, just small offshooting roads around rural areas. Moving up, we then get to U.S. highways, which confuse people because they're sort of a middle child between state routes and interstates. They work much like a state highway, but they are instead funded and upkept by the country and a larger form of government. A lot of the time for things like snow plowing, smaller areas like counties are contracted by the state DOT to upkeep, but they're still U.S. highways. So now that brings us to the real question of the video, which is what people call the divided, limited access routes around the country, and the overall differences between them. So starting with the simple one, a highway. This is the loosest definition here. A highway can be so many different things, and it's technically just any public or private road on land. Most of the time, the term is just used as any major road. In my personal opinion, anything higher than a simple town road can be called a highway, including county highways, state highways, or anything else. Next, there's the freeway, which has more of an actual meaning. Now, when talking about a controlled access highway, my term is freeway. That's what I've always called it, and the term I like to use the most to express that it is a divided controlled access highway. Now, if we get a bit further into it, a freeway is a specific kind of these highways. By definition, a freeway has to be free, which forms the main gripe with what I say, because a lot of highways are tolled and are in fact not free. So if you're trying to be as literal and exact as possible, this can only be a definition for a non-tolled limited access highway. A tolled limited access highway can have a few names though. Some call it simply a toll road, others a tollway, and then obviously the main term, which is a turnpike. This name originated from pikes, which were large poles that blocked passage until the payment was made and the pike turned. So then moving on from that, obviously we have the interstate system. Now if you're a subscriber to this channel, I'd make the assumption you know the exact definition, but basically an interstate isn't a type of road, it's a group of government-funded and upkept limited access highways that were built in the country after the 1950s. The system was created by Dwight D. Eisenhower as a way for easier military transportation, and it's turned into one of the best ways for cross-country travel. So now that we have our definitions out of the way and you're well educated, we can now get into a bit of regional talk about where calls which roads what. And so with that, let's start with expressways, because they are the most specific regional separators. An expressway is still just any form of limited access highway, and though a lot of times they do have tolls on them, it has more to do with the region than anything else. The first main place that calls it an expressway would be Chicago. They have a whole map of expressways throughout the metro that make it very confusing if you don't know the name. There's the Kennedy Expressway on I-90 within the city, and the Jane Addams Memorial Tollway on I-90 outside the city. The Ronald Reagan Expressway on I-88 outside the city, and the Eisenhower Expressway within the city. Then on I-94, there's the Kingery Expressway, the Bishop Ford Freeway, the Dan Ryan Expressway, and the Edens Expressway. Using these names instead of the more traditional numbers can serve as more detail for residents. But for people who aren't from the metro, I will say it can be miserable. New York is another city that uses the term expressway to describe its limited access highways. I won't go into full detail again, but it's home to highways like the Cross Bronx Expressway or the Brooklyn Queens Expressway. The city is also home to several parkways, which are found all throughout the state of New York due to some major historic figures. These parkways sound similar to expressways, but the main difference here is that parkways are for non-commercial vehicles only. Semis and other large commercial vehicles are banned from using the highways, and it's enforced in a cruel way, with low clearance overpasses throughout these routes. Other places in the Northeast use the term as well, with Boston and Philadelphia being home to expressways. In the South, Atlanta and Miami also use this as their main term, although these cities aren't as set on it as the only way to describe a highway of this nature. But all in all, it seems to be an East Coast thing, which obviously gives us room for a West Coast thing, which is a freeway. So if you're from the West, you are most likely going to be using freeway rather than expressway. Places like Seattle into Las Vegas and Utah use the term, and then obviously the entirety of California. Now, I'll come back to California in a bit, but Houston also uses the term freeway for some of their limited access routes, most notably the Katy Freeway. Southeastern Wisconsin and the Milwaukee area also uses the term, with places like the Lake Freeway. Moving back to California, though, they have one of the most interesting and honestly culturally important ways to refer to highways. So especially in SoCal, they put a "the" before any highway name. So you'd be driving on the 405 or the 710. I've been corrected several times on this, and it seems to be a widely agreed upon vocabulary. I've been told that this comes from the just sheer number of highways in Southern California, because it gets confusing when you just call it like I-405 or I-210, I-5. There's just too many numbers, so putting a "the" before that makes it a little less confusing. But that seems to be the main basic differences of the highways across America and what they're called. It's another topic where regions play a major role, and there are also definitions that are good to know if you care about the topic. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week: Jerome McCall, Haystack, Makita Martinoff, KMS162, Polpot's Piehole, JL, Sir JC17, Bryson, Dominic Psyche, Rosebud 4, Jeremy Jarvis, Christopher DeAngelis, Darkbird, Big Pasty, Jeremy Crone, Wolfling73, Snyder Swine, Florida Jake, Stormy Knight, Benjamin Whitings, Ryan Devins, and Hazev the Wolf. I appreciate you all so much. You really help the channel. If you want to become a member, the link is down in the description below. It's just another way to help out the channel. I really appreciate it, and it's all just going to go into my savings. So if you want to help me out as a person, that is the best way to do it. Thank you.